Welcome back from the closed session, everyone. I would look to Mr. Robbins to carry us through the open session of our agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Moving through the Committee of the Whole agenda, nothing under agenda item 3, adoption of minutes, no business arising, which brings us to public input period. We have no one online, and I'm not sure that we have anybody here in the gallery that wants to participate in that. So moving through agenda item 6, delegation, there are none. 7, correspondence, nothing. Nothing under 8, information, which moves you to 9, reports. The first report, R1, is a report from Facilities and Transit Division regards transit fare payment, electronic fare collection system.
Looking to Ms. Rondo, we've got Seth right here with the slide deck. It's fairly short, so Seth, welcome.
Thank you, Chair.
We've got staff loading up his deck. Excellent. Press, nope, again, there we go.
Thank you, members, for the opportunity to speak this morning about our electronic fare program. We're super excited. Before I dive into the slides, I just wanted to say that the reason that we've undertaken this fairly major investment into our fare infrastructure is because we have these what are called GFI fare boxes on our buses across the province, and they're well out of date. The technology used on them is not supported anymore by any vendor, and it's impossible to get new ones to replace the ones that are broken. So we were spurred by that requirement to have good fare boxes on our buses to update that technology. And so this program is funded through 90% ISIP money, which is federal and provincial funds to offset the local government share, which is 10%. There is a cost that's identified of about $75,000 a year for administering the program. That excludes the capital costs. That's the operating costs of setting up a call center and all the other administration that's an ongoing expense of supporting this program. So the next few slides sort of just talk about what the program is and what the benefits are. So fundamentally, this program is about making it easier for people to hop on the bus. So instead of having to scrounge in your couch cushions for $2.50, you can hop on the bus and pay with a card that you can reload, similar to BC Ferries Experience card or similar to sort of a gift card that you might have. That is where we want to move people to, is a reloadable card. You can also use your phone, and in about 6 months, we hope to enable the technology to allow people to pay with a credit or debit card tap. That technology is a little more cumbersome on the back end on the technology, so we don't want to do it all at the same time, just so we can have a smooth transition and avoid some of the pitfalls that our friends over in the Lower Mainland experienced with the Compass card. But we are excited about that technology, and that both will ultimately be supported. This is a short video that I don't think works today, but if you go to YouTube and type in UMO, you can see a little bit of a 45-second video on how it functions and how that works. Here's a picture of our card. So people will be able to pay, as I say, through the app, through a reloadable card that they can purchase at a number of vendors in the community, and also be able to upload more money online. So you can go onto a website and be able to add value to your card or your account. Your account can be held also on your phone. And there will be a validator on all buses. It will apply to just conventional buses, so HandyDart is not included in the scope of this, but or at this point it's not included, but it will be both on the conventional local service as well as the commuter and NCX service. And we wanted to let you know that there's a change to our refund policy. This is not something that we have set in stone, but we need to change our refund policy a little bit so that there'll be refunds on any amount over $10. And there will be a process for negotiating additional exceptions in negotiation with your staff. What we're looking for your approval at your board meeting on the 22nd is the conversion from a monthly pass, which is based on the calendar month. So if you buy a pass, you'd buy a pass for February or for you right now, but you'd lose the benefit of the part of March that we've already had. But if you buy a pass today for under UMO, it would be 30 days from the date of purchase. And so this provides an obvious benefit, but this is a little bit of a changing to the wording of our annual operating agreement. So we'll make that change if you deem to approve this on the 22nd. The other thing that we've proposed is the removal of ticket fares. So the ticket fares, you have ticket fares where you can buy 10 tickets for the price of 9. We are proposing to get rid of these to really steer people and galvanize sort of moving in the direction of this reloadable pass. But staff have identified that they'd like to retain this ticket, and so that allows for a slower transition to UMO, which is perfectly fine, and BC Transit can support it either way. But we've identified that removing the ticket enables us to move faster with that implementation, but there's no problem in having both. And that's my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Seth. Go to committee members. I've got Director Stone and Wilson to begin with. So Director Stone, go
Actually,
ahead.
I was just going to move the recommendation.
Okay, we got the recommendation moved and seconded. Director Wilson, do you wish to speak to the recommendation or pose
Yeah,
a
just a very
question?
quick one, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind. I'm getting feedback here. Okay. UMO, I just looked it up there. It is an established app. It's not a new buggy thing that we're going to have problems with, right?
Through your chair, indeed, it is an established app that's already in place in a number of American systems in particular. And the provider has provided lots of data and information, and we've been able to play with it and try it out. And they've come up to our workshop last year where we got to play with it a little bit and have significant confidence that it'll work. And we've learned from TransLink's experience in the lower mainland.
Yeah, all right, thank you.
Look to those that are participating remotely. Is there any desire for a question or comment on the resolution? Mr. Robbins, would you read the resolution, please?
That it be recommended to the board that monthly passes for conventional, Nanaimo, Cowichan Express, and Cowichan Valley Commuter Transit Services be replaced by a 30-day pass.
Seeing no further hands, call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? No one opposed. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Wright, for your presentation. Mr. Robbins.
Moving to R2 is a report from the Economic Development Division with regards to ISET Rural Advisory Program funding opportunity. There is a recommendation.
Welcome, Mr. O'Riordan. Well, we've got hands and faces, and I was going to go to a presentation. Do you have a presentation, or are you here to answer questions?
I'm here to answer questions.
Fantastic. You had your hand up first, Director Stone.
I just was, we were both looking at each other. Do we have to declare a conflict? I don't believe we do in this case. Because this is a staff administered program through ICE-T.
I guess you have to decide that.
I know. I'm comfortable being here. I don't think it represents a conflict. This is a staff administered program at ICE-T. Wouldn't be a decision of ours at the board.
It's to make an application.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it should be, and we also leave if there's decision-making
Yep.
at ICE-T.
Yep.
So I think we're good.
And with that, I'm happy to move the resolution. I do have one comment if I get a seconder.
Is there a seconder? There's a seconder. Director Stone.
It's just unfortunate this didn't come before the other one ended. I was hopeful that we would have this program roll over without this gap in between, because I felt we were on a good path with the previous opportunity that was presented. But I asked about it because I had a feeling this was going to come forward. But it's unfortunate about the gap, but I very much support this additional capacity, and it's really helpful, I know, to economic development teams across our region, so I'm happy to support this.
Looking to directors and those online, any questions in regards to this item? Keeps telling me to turn it off. Anyone remote that would like to pose a question? I see Director Deck. Go ahead, Director Deck.
I can't find it just now, but when I was reading it over, it talked about high volume logging or trees, high volume as opposed to high value. Can you tell me what the difference is there? I don't understand the difference. I'll see if I can find it in the meantime, sorry.
Sorry, can you talk into your mic?
Okay. I'm just trying to understand the difference between high value and high volume. Oh, dang.
Maybe through the
I
chair.
think this is in
that-
regards to the work that will be studied and reviewed. Go ahead, Mr. Reardon.
Is it? Oh, thanks.
I believe that's language coming out of the application process through Island Coastal Economic Trust rather than that's explaining how the program is being developed rather than necessarily the focus of the work that's going to be undertaken.
Okay, thank you very much.
Director Stone?
Just as a point of information, I could maybe clarify. There is a concerted effort on the part of the province and supported by many regional economic development to move from high volume forestry to high value, which means get greater value out of the logs and the cuts to maximize the return on the forest industry investments. Even anything from instead of slash burning piles, using that wood to create other useful products that are economic drivers rather than, and have sort of those ESG outcomes, right? So working with First Nations, forestry companies, get better determinants and better value in terms of environmental management and economic impact.
Director Deck?
I'm grateful for the clarity because value added means certainly something different than high value, which are the oldest and most valuable trees. So thanks for that clarity.
Any other questions for Mr. O'Riordan on the application that's going to proceed if we approve? Can I have the resolution, please, Mr. Robbins?
That it be recommended to the board on March 8th, 2023, that a grant application up to a maximum of $70,000 be submitted to the Island Coastal Economic Trust Rural Advisory Program.
Everyone's clear on the resolution. I'll call a question. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? Not opposed, the motion carries. Mr. Robbins? Thank you,
Moving-
Mr. O'Riordan.
Moving to R3 is a report from the General Manager, Community Services Department with regards to regional recreation governance options. This is for committee's direction.
Mr. Elzinga, welcome. Been preparing for this for a couple of years?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I would like to say with the adoption of the budget today that there has been a significant achievement with the regional recreation discussion. And I know there's mixed feelings, but from staff's perspective, it is an achievement. We're now moving on to the next project regarding regional recreation, which is governance. We've heard from the board that we want to do this in bite-sized chunks. This is another big chunk when we're talking about governance, and we're starting down that road. Couple of comments I heard through the budget process is I didn't necessarily get a say as a member of the board on that particular commission discussion. That's what this is all about today, is to decide whether you want to delegate oversight to commissions or whether you want to have one regional committee or commission. So just a brief history. In 2020, the board approved one committee, but also wanted to investigate facility-specific advisory committees. When staff recommended task forces in lieu of advisory committees, the board directed investigation of a commission structure using local and usage thresholds. The board deferred consideration until after the referendum, so it's coming forward today. Ultimately, staff are looking for a recommendation to the board that directs whether there should be one regional committee or commission or multiple bodies. Available for questions, Mr. Chair.
That was a lot more succinct than I thought it was going to be. I've got Director McGonigal and Wilson first. Let me just, okay, McGonigal, Wilson, Stone, Douglas, Segal, Let's start with Director McGonigal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Through you, thank you, Mr. Elzinga. If we thought getting to regional recreation was a difficult process, getting to the governance model, I hope will not be as convoluted and as long as that process. I have always advocated for public participation within commissions. A prime example is the sub-regional aspect of the West with FI and the town that has worked well with a diversity of elected officials and public input at those commissions. And I would be more than happy to go along with option C with that 6% threshold, taking into consideration that all participants in the regional district will be paying into these facilities. But at a threshold, at least you have lessened the governance model moving forward. I think 6% is a reachable and achievable aspect for governance, and I would be in support of that.
Thank you, Director McGonigal. Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And Director McGonigal has touched on one of the things that I was going to bring up. I did have a question, but I have a conversation with Mr. Elzinga during the break there, which he's answered extremely well. And we did decide that he would probably just expand on my question and give a little bit of explanation as to basically the question of taxation without representation, basically on the smaller regions, which would be excluded from being part of the governance model. Thank you, Mr. Elzinga.
Mr. Elzinga.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to Director Wilson. So one of the principles that was brought forward through the regional recreation studies was that if you pay, you should have a say. And so that's a basic principle that we're talking here. So the opportunity exists to delegate some authority to sub-regional bodies, and that is that's the discussion we're having today. So typically you would have a say because even now in a commission structure, all budget discussions and agreements do come forward to the board at some point for your consideration.
Yeah, good stuff. Thanks, Mr. Elzinga.
Next, I've got Director Stone.
Thank you. Following on previous comments, I would also look at supporting option C. Just a couple of quick questions. So I see that like North Cowichan would be represented on all commissions, I think. Would that give the opportunity, this wouldn't be the same representative for every one of those commissions, because that might be a full-time job for somebody. I guess that would be the choice of the nominating body, or to be determined.
Go ahead, Mr. Elzinga.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through to Director Stone. So I would like to put that in the category of to be determined because depending on decisions that are made today, we will be coming back for a number of different decisions. Again, we're heading down a path and there's going to be various other decisions that need to be made, including does an increased amount of usage warrant an increased amount of representation? So that is a question that will come to you shortly as we move down this road. How much authority do you want to delegate as part of this? So I do anticipate a fairly lengthy discussion on this that may take 2 or 3 months, and I do see that at a follow-up meeting if possible.
Great, thank you. And a follow-up, if I may.
Go ahead.
And so, much like the Cowichan Community Center Commission, those budget recommendations stuff flow to the board for approval. So those aren't ingrained based on the commission decision. They would still have to be confirmed and supported by the board. Again, or is that another to be determined?
So through the chair to Director Stone, so that is the model that is currently in place, and we are starting with a bit of a blank slate. So we would be incorporating a lot of the principles that have seemed to be successful to date. I would anticipate we would be heading in that direction, but that would be a decision of the board of, again, how much authority do you want to give to a sub-regional body?
Okay, thank you. And just a final comment, if I may. So I am supportive of option C, and I do very much appreciate that idea of representation and also the thought that moving forward that this board would have that final sort of check-in and just being mindful that I think that it would be smart if for somebody like North Cowichan to be able to look at the breadth of their region and say, appoint someone or recommend someone be appointed to that commission that would have the most understanding and direct involvement with that sort of sub-regional area. So thank you for the work. I look forward to the report where I think we can really dig into it, but I would support option C.
And can I just clarify that I got the same report? I'm looking at option 3 is the one that I'm thinking people are referring to as option C. Okay.
My apologies.
Yeah, well-
He's so influential,
He
Director
is.
McGonigal had
He
me.
is.
C is the third letter.
Director Douglas. Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I had a couple questions. I know we've got 3 options in the report, but previously there had been discussion at the board with regards to one regional committee for recreation. And I'm wondering if Mr. Elzinga could comment on that previous proposal and perhaps highlight some of the pros and cons of taking that approach. Because I'll just say to the board, to me, there is some appeal with that. I know all of us around this table have many commitments, so to think of North Cowichan having to send appointees to 4 different bodies, and I assume our staff would be involved in that as well. It does put an additional burden on us, and I'm sure it's the case for everyone around this table.
Before you answer, Mr. Elzinga, I'd remind everyone to pull your mics right up in front of your mouth so that the people at home
How's that,
can
Mr.
hear.
Chair?
Were you able to hear that at home?
Here,
More or
I
less.
can repeat it quickly. The question was just with regards to the proposal presented in, I believe it was 2020, on rather than having 4 sub-regional committees, having 1 regional committee for recreation, which had, I believe, initially been proposed by staff as the preferred option. I've just asked Mr. Elzinga to provide us with a bit of an overview of that and highlight some of the pros and cons. And Mr. Chair, I had one other question. It was one you and I discussed, so if you want to ask it.
Well, you know what? We'll just load it up right now for you, Mr. Elzinga. Are we talking about political representation on the commissions or member residents of appointed by, well, however we come to that?
So, Mr. Chair, if I can, I'll tackle that one first. And so, again, that would be in the category of to be determined. So, depending on the structure, whether we have one regional body, whether we have sub-regional commissions, a next discussion would be around elected officials or appointed members of the community being part of those bodies. And so, therefore, when I say the word regional, I've been trying to be careful to say committee or commission, depending on how we go with that. To Director Douglas's question around what happened back in 2019 with the Committee of the Whole or Community Services Committee, I believe at that time recommendation to the board, which was considered in January of 2020, the board approved the principle of one committee because of the point that Director Wilson raised around everybody having a say. However, at that time, there was representatives from commissions here that were bringing to the board concerns about having some more local representation. And so the board at that time made 2 motions. One is to approve having one committee, at that point, a standing committee of the board, as well as looking at facility-specific advisory committees. And so that's where we've gone down this road. Specific advisory committees, staff took that as task forces. It seemed to make most sense. However, the board in May, June, July of last year said, let's look at this commission structure with thresholds. So there was a decision made by the board for that based on the principle that Director Wilson brought forward.
Quick follow-up, please.
Just a quick follow-up is, and I believe this was highlighted in some of the background materials for this item. Could you speak, Mr. Elzinga, to what the staffing implications are of the one regional committee versus the 4 sub-regional committees? Because I know, from the municipal perspective, there is that concern of having to send municipal staff to some of these meetings. I'm sure it's the same with the other municipalities. And then also, I'm assuming that would be the case here for the regional district as well, having to provide increased staff support for more meetings, for more bodies.
So Through to Director Douglas, great point. And so I've certainly had discussion with the municipal recreation directors for your departments around capacity. And I do appreciate option 3 in the report, because if we're breaking the principle of everybody having a say at a committee level, let's really break it to streamline operations as much as we possibly can. So in the option 3 model, it would be my interpretation that North Cowichan, for instance, would have to send some representation, yet to be determined whether that's elected official or appointed members of the community, to 4 different commissions. However, staff from North Cowichan would have to attend 2, because the facilities of the Cowichan Aquatic Center would be in the core area. The facility of Fuller Lake Arena would be in the north area, but the staff wouldn't be speaking to Cowichan Lake Sports Arena because they wouldn't be managing that facility. So your staff would be attending 2 commissions, but we would require representation at all 4, if that makes sense.
And I'm just going to remind everyone, we have lunch coming in 16 minutes. I have 5 people on the speakers list, and if we don't conclude this before noon, we will be adding this on to the end of the closed board, I'm assuming. So with that in mind, Director Segal.
Thank you. I'll try to be quick. You can hear me, right? Yeah, I really support the proportional usage that has been brought up, so I look forward to those conversations. But I feel really passionate that we do involve local people in these commissions, not just one committee that oversees all of the recreation centers. I think that if it seems like too much administration for North Cowichan, maybe we should be looking at more models in. I mean, they have such a high % usage rate. It's hard to cut down or increase that threshold without cutting out Cobble Hill from the southern west. So it's hard based on that percentage just because they have such a population base. But I think I'd be open to more conversations around that so that it works for North Cowichan's administration as well as involves local people to provide input on these recreation centers, because we can really see if we reduce local input, we're going to reduce local interest. You can see that in recreation centers like the Hub and the Saltaire Community Center that are run by their communities. They have wonderful attendance, volunteer, involvement. If we pull away that local input, I think I couldn't support that. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Segal. Director Manhas.
Mr. Chair, I had the same questions. Mr. Chair, I had the same questions that Director Douglas had, so thanks.
Thank you. Director Acton.
Thank you. So my question was going to be around the structure. I do support number 3, and I would like to, I would like to suggest that we don't have elected officials on these commissions or committees. It's actually been brought to our attention from previous legislative services that it wasn't actually good governance to be advising ourselves. And I like the representation of the local community and the locals who are using the facility. The question I have is how will we make decisions around new services brought by the center? I know currently at Kerry Park we want to discuss a gym. So what commission or how can that be discussed when that's being funded only by A, B, C, and D?
Mr. Elzinga.
So there's a couple of pieces to that. So first of all, just a reminder on the principle that if there is an expansion of services, it would not be part of the regional recreation funding model. And so we would have to determine with the question that Director Acton has posed, whether that is indeed an expansion of service or whether that would be part of the current operations of that facility. So how an item could be brought forward forward is through whatever governance structure you wish. And if there is one regional committee, then a component of the South End may be bringing that forward to that regional committee or commission, if there is no sub-regional commission. Obviously, people in a local area probably feel more comfortable going to a sub-regional commission, but I would submit that there are still ways to bring those issues forward.
Thank you. This is one of those,
So, sorry, one question then. Is this
You have
model
a follow-up,
suggesting that we
Director
also?
Acton?
Follow up, thank you. So did I miss something? Is this model number 3 also suggesting that there would also be a regional committee?
I'll answer that. I don't believe so. It would report to the committee or the board.
Well, just by Mr. Elzinga's answer, it confused me.
Mr. Elzinga, do you want to provide clarification again, please?
Again, and we probably would provide clarification through discussion around how much authority we would delegate to these commissions. But the current model is that commissions are fairly similar to committees in their authority. So typically, a commission decision right now gets recommended straight to the board and bypasses the committee. So the chair here is correct. I do not anticipate a regional body as well as sub-regional bodies.
Does that conclude your remarks? Director
Yes, thank you.
Markman, Stone to close. Director Markman.
Great, I'll get this close. Thank you for the report and the ideas. I'm not in favor of option C3 or 3C, or whichever one that is. And I'll go back to, maybe I'll ask a question first. Do we clearly have a mandate of a commission at this point?
Mr. Elzinga?
So I'll take a shot at that question. So there are existing commission bylaws that mandate the authority and operation of a number of facilities. So it is my understanding that North Cowichan does not have a commission or a committee structure for recreation now, but some of the other facilities do, and Ladysmith has its Parks and Recreation Committee. So they have a mandate, I believe, through bylaw, if that answers the question.
Follow up?
Yes, and a couple perhaps. I think, so where I'm really leaning towards is in my questioning is that I gather the heavy lifting is done at commission or committee level. Is that correct? In terms of the decisions that are being made for the facilities, and the types of decisions I'm thinking of are fees that are set, programs that are set, that type of thing. Or am I incorrect?
Mr. Elzinga?
Certainly, the commissions have input into some of the direction in programs. Fees are an interesting discussion, and so municipal partners have fees and charges by law. We have some for some of our other operations. We do not have a fees and charges by law for recreation. And so it has been a bit of a mixed bag as to how fees and charges get determined over time. So sometimes that gets brought to the board, sometimes it's made at the commission level for whatever reason. And sometimes it's just as part of the budget process.
And that's part of the fun discussion at commissions to try and compete with the other facilities, which I imagine that will likely go away. Director Markman, go ahead.
So when the regional referendum came forward, and it was, as you say, if you pay, you should have a say. How much you pay never came up. And that's a concern for myself and my community. Area H got pulled into this reluctantly, and they did not support it through the people that voted at the regional recreation referendum. And so now my community is being told, but if you don't pay enough, you won't have ability to have a say. And so I think there's a simple answer, and that's maybe if you pick a 2% threshold and anything below it you don't pay, then I think my community would say, okay, that'd be fine. But if you are saying, let's go to, you still continue to pay and have no say, I'm just finding this really, taxation without representation, and that's a difficult one. Even though it may eventually come through to the board for final say, I think the decisions and the information and the material that you need to ponder needs to happen at the commission or committee level, and that's where I would like to have someone from Area H to have the ability to have that conversation and represent those people from my area that are saying, this is important to us, or this piece is important to us, or this is what we think. Because it's to me, it's alienating by removing them from that opportunity. And I think I'd be looking to say, let's be inclusive. And I'm struggling to understand what would be the issue of Area H sitting in on the ones that they contribute to. Like, what is the problem with having a representative there on that particular commission or committee?
Mr. Elzinga?
So if I understand the question, what we would be talking about is taking all members of the board who pay toward a facility or a function and move them to a commission for representation at that commission. So in essence, what I understand is we would be taking 16 members and putting them down at Kerry Park, and then at Shawnigan Lake, and then at Cowichan Lake, and then at Frank Jameson, rather than having one regional committee where the issues come forward to one committee and there's representation at this committee. So rather than having all members on every commission, which is basically an implied, I guess, option, we haven't gone that road. We have gone down the path toward a regional committee. I'm not sure if I've answered the question, but when we're talking about Area H, we would basically be talking about all areas going to different commissions, would we not?
Go
Sorry,
ahead.
follow up. No,
Director
for Area
Marlin?
H, I think we pay into Ladysmith and Fuller Lake, and yeah, only a few of the, I mean, maybe, and I think the Cowichan Complex is, but there may be one other, but there's, no, we don't certainly use any of the 9 facilities.
Mr. Elzinga?
I do not have the data in front of me, but I would suggest that Area H pays toward at least 7 or 8 of the facilities, even minimally. Under 2%.
Yep.
Under 2%, but
So-
minimally.
So hang on, I gotta jump in here
Yep.
just for a second, as,
Yep.
as old guy who's been around here for a little bit. There's all sorts of issues up. First of all, let's put the taxation without representation story to bed. We're all here. We all represent, okay? So, all our communities are represented. The format of these meetings are more about local input, local understanding of facilities, and they're advising us, just as the current commissions advise us. So I would strongly suggest that if we start going down in the thresholds, we're going to have to all be appointing different people to attend different meetings all over the Cowichan Valley, and we're going to start running into quorum issues. There's going to be, it will be a burden on the individual community members that we represent. I think the answer about taxation without representation, it's kind of a red herring, because we are all here and we are all making decisions. Our current commissions have recommendation and advisory powers to us, but we all get to decide what those powers are ultimately going to be. So it gets a lot more convoluted, the more jurisdictions that come into play on how the commissions are made up. Do you want to conclude with another remark?
Thank you, and I appreciate the input, Chair. I think it's a lot more experience in terms of how it functions, but I can tell you from a perspective of somebody living in the outer areas of a regional district and saying that you are contributing, then to tell them that, well, yes, your elected representative is the one that's going to be giving you representation for your payment, it doesn't play out in terms of all the conversations, all the decisions, all the things that happen at the committee level or commission level. It just does not play out. And we know that happens as a board. How does that voice get heard for my constituents? And I would say that voice is not getting heard equally as everybody else's. And you're saying that because we don't pay enough for something, we don't have an equal voice at a certain committee level. And I think philosophically, I find that difficult. And, you know, it's, I think Director Stone once said, well, Ben, when you pay for transit, you can have a voice in transit. And I'm saying, well, I'm paying for, and we're paying for recreation. I want to have that voice equally at the same level you have. And yeah, even for a few dollars, you open that door for us. We're paying, we want that voice. Thank you.
So I'm going to reiterate, I wish I would have put a resolution on the floor early on. I've got Director Stone and I've got Director Nicholson. Director Stone, go ahead.
Thank you. I just looking at the thresholds and the amounts and such, and I appreciate Director Martman's work on behalf of where I live. And note that the only area with more than 2% usage for Area H is actually the Sportsplex and Floor Lake Arena within the region. And the contribution funding-wise to those other facilities would be just those dollars that we need representation for. So then the question goes back to a regional group, because I think the administrative burden of every director or every area having representation in every commission would really drive the costs up, and actually probably likely increase the costs more to those areas when you're allocating those administrative costs than actually their contribution to those other facilities. So we have to have some logic behind the representation question. But that being said, I still look at what the previous discussions have been about geographical and financial representation. And option 3 seems to make the most sense, recognizing that those recommendations come forward to the board for decision. And just looking at the mix of that sort of geographical reality, and then the participation and usage of those facilities, I believe that option 3 makes the most sense, and I would move that we support option 3 at this point. Thank you.
Duly moved and seconded. Go to Director Nicholson.
Okay, well, I think I am very confused at this point. So I sit on the Cowichan Community Center Commission, and I like it. We don't meet that often, but we meet often enough that I understand the issues that the facility is facing. We meet often enough that we've had to deal with some pretty big community concerns that have come up over time, including the maple tree that used to grow outside the entrance of so we work through all those things, and we only have elected representatives on the commission. So one of my confusions here is I think in the south they have other people as well. So I think we need to be clear about what we're talking about here. And so, I mean, I suppose you could do different models, but what it speaks to me is the question about regional recreation. And I am very interested in thinking about recreation more regionally and from a strategic perspective and where we're going in the long term. So we've got all these facilities, and we can have either local reps or we can have us on commissions that deal with the day-to-day budgeting and all that kind of stuff, and year to year, and keep the facilities afloat. But I think as we move forward, that there are some important strategic questions about providing recreation facilities for the community. And I will refer you back to the survey that was done. Mr. Elzing, I can't remember the name of it, but it was pretty clear that people in the community were really focusing a lot more on outdoor recreation. And so I'm not saying that that means facilities need to go away, but as our community grows, we need to kind of balance what kind of facilities make the most sense to make it a livable community. And you can only have those discussions if you think about the whole thing, not. So I am wondering, I'm wondering where that discussion will happen. Because it's not, if these commissions go directly to the board, then it doesn't allow you to have that conversation, which is what I think is the most important conversation at this point. I think you can make the other one work either way.
Mr. Elzinga, any general remarks in regards to those questions?
So thank you, Mr. Chair, through to Director Nicholson. So I believe you're referring to the public engagement, which was phase one of this whole regional recreation endeavor. And you're exactly correct that there was a lot of interest in outdoor recreation. Parks and Trails was the #1 priority in 10 of the 13 jurisdictions. There was interest in the climbing wall in Area F, and in electoral area A and B, there still remains some interest in an aquatic facility. So I understand what you're saying regarding that. All I can offer you is that when there has been regional issues in the past, on occasion, it has come forward to a standing committee of the board, the Community Services Committee, or a committee of the whole. Sometimes, for instance, right now, we're looking at appointments to the Sport Tourism Event Grant Committee, and so we've gone to each commission to ask for their representative. We could just as easily have come to a regional committee and asked for 5 representatives representing the different areas. So we have done that in the past on a sporadic basis. It's an avenue, but yeah, that's about all I can offer, I guess.
Yeah, thank you for that, and that was exactly the line of thinking where I was going, that a standing committee of the board, be it committee of the whole or whatever, could certainly have that added to its roles and responsibilities for those general and broader discussions that Director Nicholson has brought up. I see no hands on the screen. I see no further hands in the room. The resolution has been duly moved and seconded. Is everyone clear? It's option 3. Do we need it read, Mr. Robbins? Would that be a good idea at this point?
It is lengthy.
Then you better read it. Is everybody very clear? Everybody at home very clear? Mr. Elzinga?
In preparation for seeing which way this discussion was going, I had 2 or 3 different motions. So if it's okay with Mr. Robbins, I'll put a proposal on the table so that it be recommended to the board. Option 3 of the Regional Recreation Governance Options Report to the March 8th, 2023 Committee of the Whole.
That's what Director Stone moved and someone seconded, right? Exactly. Thank you for that, Mr. Elzinga. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? We have 2 opposed. Thank you very much for that. The motion carries. Mr. Robbins.
We move to question period, but there's no one online in the gallery here, so a motion to adjourn.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?